Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar on Prism, what to expect during migration. My name is Rocio Ramirez, and I have Ashish Maharaja with us today, our Director of Operations here at Exact, and I will be helping him through this webinar presentation. If you have any questions throughout, and before I forget, we also have Kanal B. I like to call him Kanal B because we have another Kanal on our team as well, but he will also be helping us during today's webinar. If you have any questions throughout the webinar, please add your questions in the questions box. We will be pausing periodically to ensure your questions are answered as usual. Feel free to download today's presentation to follow along or keep as a reference. You can find that in the handout section. This webinar will be recorded and shared with you via email 1 hour after the webinar ends and will also be made available on our YouTube channel. We're going to give folks just a couple more minutes to get logged on and get their audio sorted, so we'll be back with you in just a few minutes. Thank you. All right, and without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. Ashish, if you're all ready.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Rocio, for introducing. Hi, everyone. My name is Ashish Maharaja. I'm the Director of Operations here at US. I'm based in Boston. Uh, Today, we have our topic about Prism migration and what to expect. And the main focus for our this webinar is to make sure that you all are aware about what it entails when there is a migration from version 3, which is where you would be at the moment, to our new version, which is Prism slash version 4, because still few people might be having that as a version 4, which is our Prism. So let's go to the next slide and set the agenda for this presentation and the webinar. So in today's call, we will primarily focus on the overview of the Prism at a very high level. What does Prism means, and what are the different aspects of Prism which we have introduced. The second item which we will be discussing is more about the scope of migration. When we say migration, what it entails, what are the things which needs to be done as a part of the pre-migration, what happens during the migration, and what will happen post migrations. And also and the third point which we want to highlight is about all the training sessions and what all the resources which will be available for you before and after the migration is done. So those are the three primary aspects which we want to cover in this particular webinar. Okay, so as in the overview from a Prism perspective, when we started from moving from or developing Prism as an application, our main goal was that we integrate all the aspects of a clinical management or entire education from a perspective. In version 3, you might be also seeing that you have clinical management as a steps, then you have plan for curriculum management, you have CCS as a part of managing the contracts. But as we were designing Prism, we wanted to have an integrated view of all these aspects, which is academic programs, curriculum mapping more from an accreditation perspective, a clinical management, which is the main steps thing which you have at the moment, and then on the compliance side, which is making sure that you have the background checks, the compliance, the immunizations, and all of them. This is where we integrated all this functionality in Prism. So now, instead of you having different application of plan, CCS, steps, we have everything inside Prism. So Prism contains all the features which were there as a part of steps, plan, and CCS. So that's a main foundational element which we want to highlight in this, that this is this is what you get when we are moving to Prism. The functionality is more an integrated view. As we were also designing Prism, there were multiple sort of a user's access which we have been working with and trying to streamline it. In the version 3, you might have seen that you have this administrative side of access and student side of access. So to go into Prism, we did feel that there is a separate stakeholder which we have not addressed in version 3, but we wanted to address, and which is who are the critical stakeholder, is the faculty. Specifically, when we go into a faculty, we required a faculty view to have them very precise view and a focused way to looking into the students, looking into their courses, looking into the students evaluations, and what are the students where they are advisor. So this gives a very clean and a very focused view of the faculty. So that is where we introduce a faculty view for them, a login, a separate login for faculties. So we have an administrative login, we have a faculty login, and the third thing is what we have, the student login. Now all these screens which we are seeing is of Prism. They are much more streamlined, much more simple, and as soon as each of the stakeholder logs in, they will be very clearly be able to see what they need to do. So we have as a part of the Prism, you will see that the screens are much cleaner. You will know where exactly you need to go and have a call of action very clearly called out. So that's one of the call outs which I want to highlight in this Prism migration before we go into the nitty gritty of what it takes to migrate. Yes, now from a product perspective, as a Prism as a product, we have recreated features which were there in version 3, but it does not mean that whatever you see in version 3 is ditto in Prism. You will get the outcome of what you expect, but the same click on this particular menu, this is where it is available, it may not be available, but it will provide you what you need in a different way. So we are more driven from an outcome base, and we have redesigned considering the different feedback we got from our clients on version 3, and how they need it. So that was an entire exercise and an experience to create this Prism as a whole. So you see that there are few things which you, and that is what would be the learning curve as we move into Prism, to understand that how the same feature in version 3 is much more simplified in Prism. So, and more or less, if you see that there are very specific things which you required for your program, we are doing a very due diligence and releasing features every 6 to 8 weeks. So if it's, as of now, if it's not there, it would be coming up. So, and this is all I'm going to discuss as a part of the migration, but we will, this slide specifically calls out, okay, what needs to happen, what are the features available, what happens as a part of our rollout. And if you have a very specific requirement or a questions, you can reach out as prismmigration@exact.com, and we'll respond back on whether that specific features is available or when it will be available. Okay, so now let's see on what it deals with the migration. So first of all, first thing is migration and free of charge. So we have received a lot of questions about, okay, is it charge, migration is charge? Do we need to pay something extra for Prism migration? So answer is no. The migration is totally free. We will be taking care of all the migrations which is there, but at the same time it's not mandatory. But it is recommended that you move to the newer applications. We make sure that when you move to this newer applications, you are being provided with all the resources for you to basically complete your clinical management and uh, uh, the entire clinical management perspective. So that would be available as a part of our Prism migration. uh, Migration will be part of a 1 week. It takes 1 week for migrating you from version 3 to Prism. So the way it works is, you can reach out to us via this particular email address, which is there in this slide, prismmigration@exact.com, and our account manager will be contacting you and scheduling a call with you to go into more details about what are the cohorts which we need to migrate, which placements will get migrated. They will have more detailed conversations post that with you. But if you are interested in migration, please reach out at this email address. Our account manager will contact, will schedule a call, and we'll go from there, which will mean that timelines and everything will be discussed during that particular call. To highlight one more thing, one more question which we get very often, what happens to our version 3 access? What happens to our data? Version 3 access will be there for you. So this is, you will still continue to have your version 3. You can access it as is. Prism would be one more access which will be available if you are using two systems, or your other cohorts which are there in version 3, you will continue to have access to version 3 here. So that is going to be part of your access. And let me pause here before we go here. Any questions on this till now? Anything coming out, Rocio?
I am not seeing any questions so far, so we
Okay,
should be good, but I'll keep an eye and let you know.
thank you. Thank you. Good. So now from a migration point of view, once we have the migration, as we discussed earlier, what is the migration? Now, what is the process of the migration? So as we mentioned, 5-step process. The first one is you reach out to us, or our account manager is going to be proactively reaching out that, hey, we are moving to Prism. Can you do you are you interested? And they will be scheduling a call with you to understand your requirement, the timeline, what works for you, when can you migrate. So that is the part of discussion where you can reach out to us at the specific, and our account manager are also proactively reaching out to the to our all the programs, our university partners, to migrate them into Prism. So that is the step one. Step two is we will work out on the timelines. We will work out on which week of this entire, let's say for example March, after March say 15th is what we are going to migrate. We will take that 1 week of time and we'll let you know that, hey, this is on Monday we are starting your migration. We will be completing on the next Monday, and this is where the migration will happen. So we will have a very clear call out to you that when actually the migration happens and when it will be closed. Now, but when we do this migration, we need to do some prior activities. So once we confirm the dates and the week of migration, uh, we will be working with you to make sure that the version 3 data is good and correct. Now there would be some of the conversations about the data which will be coming up, few of the cleanup, which is an opportunity for you to do some cleanups. If all your data is clean up and good, it would be much more easier for us also, and for you also, and have an opportunity to make sure that you have a right data coming into Prism. So there would be some of the email conversations which will start between our migration team and with our account managers and you, to have a sort of a conversation on what are the data confirmations, like how many sites you have, which cohorts we are moving, are we good with this particular cohorts? There are 50 students. All of those discussions we will be doing and making sure that the data is correct before we move them and start that 1 week of duration. Now, let's assume that you have signed up, we agreed on the dates on the week. Now we have all the data being cleaned. We have agreed on what is the scope of the migration. Now the fourth point is the week comes in. Now in this specific week's time, the expectation is if you are migrating a specific cohort, we don't want that students to log in, but you can still continue to use version 3. The only thing is what we are doing is that, let's say you are migrating on this Feb 13, for example, was Monday. So Feb 13, if you are migrating, Feb 13 is the date when we do a cutoff of version 3 and move it to Prism. Now if you are logging in version 3 and modifying certain sites, then that data will not come to Prism. So what the expectation is that don't do any modification between this week's time. From a student point of view, if those cohort are moving, we will try, we are recommending that we are letting you know that you should let the student know not to log in, because their login would be disrupted, because we are moving that student from one system to other. So that's where we are saying that what is that 1 week of hands off. When we say hands off, it does not mean that you don't have a you can't log in, but you log in, but don't modify any specific things which are getting migrated. And then once that week is completed, as a point number 5, what we are seeing, or a step 5, once that migration completes on Monday, from 1 week migration, on Monday you will receive the login invites. You, in the sense that all the administrative staffs will receive the login invites. You will then be, yeah, based on our earlier discussion, there might be a certain timeline that, hey, we will review the overall data of Prism, everything looks okay, and then there might be certain other activities like inviting students and all of that. So that is something which will go after those login invites, and all these details will be discussed during the discovery calls which our account managers and the team will be scheduling. As I was mentioning, when you are migrating, so the step one, when you are migrating, the 1 week of framework where you have that is there. Also, how to identify the best time. One more thing is about accreditations. If you are in between the some of your self studies is being there as a part of your accreditation, uh, let's not migrate during this week, because you need to make sure that your data is correct, your data is uh, available for you during that time. So if there is any of your accreditation going on, let's not schedule any migration during that time. So that way you have a good visibility, accessibility of the version 3, and you can work on that part. Uh, as I was saying on this point, the second point I already covered about what is the preparation we need to do more on the data perspective, whether the sites are cleaned, or whether the personnels are all cleaned, all the cohorts which are correct or not. So all those things which will be done by our exacting, and we will be doing the review as a part of the migration. As you are deciding on what to migrate. Now here, this slide is specifically, or this particular sections which we want to highlight, is to help you on what are the things which needs to be migrated, or how you decide on what needs to be done. So some of the recommendations are how to identify students, which students to bring in. So normally, obviously, the thing is, graduating students, if they are graduating in next 3 months, 6 months time, and they have completed their major rotations or a clinical experience in version 3, let it be in version 3, let them complete and get graduate in version 3. The other very clear picture is, if the new cohort are coming up, it is an opportunity to do direct migration or direct movement into Prism. So those are the very clear sort of use cases where you have the the thing which will be more about the discussion with our account managers would be like, what happens for the existing cohorts which is in between. Now that is the discussion which we'll have, where we need to basically have a dialogue with you on what are the things which will move as a part of it, whether we need to keep it in version 3 or in Prism. So that is something a discussion needs to happen, and that is what those calls would be with our account managers and our team, to understand what would be the best cohorts to migrate. Also, during the migration, we obviously, as I mentioned earlier, the students should not be in the clinical, they should not be doing any activity. And also, there should not be any open wish list where students need to provide those preferences, because as you know, we will be moving it, student may be interrupted with their logins. So those are the way you identify the cohorts. Those are the way where you will identify when to migrate from a perspective of the student side. Identifying sites and personnel, some of the things which needs to happen as a part of the migration is to, as I was mentioning, if you have a good data, it will help you only when you move to Prism. uh, the way which from a site and personnel is to make sure that no uh, there are no personnels like SCCs or the CIs or preceptors are mapped to if make sure that all the CIs or preceptor or any personnels are having some mapping or an association with their sites. If they are not that, then those particular personnel will not move, because there is no association with any of the sites there. And we have, for you to identify all these things, in version 3 we have created few of the reports, and those reports will help you to identify such data where you need some corrections. And that is where during the call with individual university partner, we will go through it and identify that those are the specific personnel which are not having any association, for example. And then that is what would be a part of a pre-migration cleanup which needs to happen. Other thing is more from a sessions perspective. In version 3 you have sessions or placements. We recommended that you have all the placements for the batch which you are migrating. For example, if you are migrating class of 2024, we move all your placement accordingly. So you can identify that, hey, for class of 2024, all the placements are CE1, experience 1, 2, 3. Let's move them into Prism. So those discussion is what you will have during those discovery calls with our team, that, hey, for class of 2024, we have 4 placements or 4 sessions. This is what all of them we need to migrate. All the placements may have completed, we will move them so that at least you have a record of all the historical placements. So that is the way we decide on how on what to migrate and how to basically have your scope defined on that. Before we go into the week, any questions you have?
Not seeing any questions, Ashish.
Okay, excellent. Okay, now during the week of migration, as I was mentioning, the step 3 of week of migration, uh, we will have a 1 week of hands-off, what we call. But during that time, as I mentioned, don't make any changes into the data because that data will not be moved. Uh, but the students who are not migrating, okay, good point here. The second point, students who are not migrating can continue to use version 3, no impact. So let's say, for example, class of 2023 and class of 2025. Now, class of 2023 is going to remain in version 3. Those students can log in. They are not interrupted during the migration week. Nothing is there. So you can continue with their operations, whatever you are doing. But if class of 2025 is going and they are doing some clinical or they are in the clinic during that migration week, ideally we should not migrate, or we should not migrate during that particular week. So that's what the point number 2 is. And during this migration week, we will be, or what happens? So what will happen is, let's say February 13th was a migration week. We would have provided you a week before an update on, say, hey, we are going to migrate your 300 sites. These are the personnel migrating, and we are going to start the migration on February 13th, and it will be completed on February 20th. So those were the pre-migration updates, and communication will come to you. During the migration week, we will keep you posted that, hey, we have completed your students, your site migrations. Then once we complete your placement migration, we'll keep you updated. So there will be a couple of communication coming on your way during that week on what's going on. And as we end our migration, there would be a communication from our team that, hey, your migration is completed. You will be getting a login invite on Monday. So that is how the communication, we are trying to make sure that we do an over communication so that you are up to date on those aspects of what's going on with your migration. So that is what will happen as a part of the status update. Okay. So we covered how to plan, what to plan, what are the different students would different elements, or how to decide on what elements would be getting into the migration. Now, in this specific section, what I want to cover here is what gets migrated from version 3 to Prism. Now here, if you see, and this is the data which you will also receive as a part of the discovery call when it will happen during the like 4 or 5 weeks before the migration. Uh, what this particular table shows that, for example, for program, student, and compliance, we are going to migrate everything, but we are not going to migrate the clinical questionnaire. For example, here in this is no. So we are not going to migrate the clinical questionnaire data into Prism. But if you have a specific, because at this moment we are not migrating any of the questionnaires or any of the evaluations and all that stuff. So that is what is coming to the next slide. So more from a student perspective, everything is going compliance, all of them, program details, settings, all of them is getting migrated into Prism apart from one items. And all these things, these slides are available. If you have any questions after this that I want to understand what happens to a specific no items, you can let us know and we will reply to you one-on-one on what are the specific scope and what is to be done for those. Here, what are the things from a site perspective we are migrating? If you see from a site things, and when we created when we were doing some of our analysis, we found that there were a lot of attributes which are not used in version 3. What I'm here collecting and providing you this information is what are the attributes which are getting migrated. The ones which we say no are not getting migrated, so that data you will not see. Now the way we have done this thing is based on the data analysis which we have, and the lot of overall school we have seen that these are all the data not used or not being even added. So here, for example, we have site archive document, we have site ownership information. So all of this informations we are not going to pull into Prism. But if you have a specific ask and if you are using it somehow, we will be discussing and trying to work out with you on how this can be basically moved or captured. So this is from a site and personnel specific item. Most of them you will see that they are there. All important items are available. Placements, learning activities, and post placement. So placement perspective, we are going to move everything apart from the wish list data. As I mentioned, we are not going to wish list. We are not going to move wish list, because wish list is more a transactional thing which you have for that specific thing. You might have taken a decision already on the wish list, so we are not moving any wish list specific data. We are not moving major thing which I want to highlight is the learning activity part. We are not moving any data of prior evaluations or patient logs or case logs, timesheets. We are not moving into Prism. So this whenever we are doing those decision making of which cohort to go, if it's in between, and if, for example, the let's say C1 is the first rotation is completed, if you feel that those data, evaluation data, are not something which you want to do more an horizontal view, then you can move into this. But if you want that there are two rotations completed and I want a one integrated view of a cohort with an evaluation data, we would suggest that you keep that cohort in version 3 and start a new cohort from Prism itself, so you have all your evaluation data or your case log data at a one go. Otherwise you will have to log in into two systems. So this is one of the things more from a perspective of the way version 3 in Prism is being developed. The Prism is much more in a newer technology compared to version 3, and there is a more technical limitations on how to map all those elements and the way we have configured in version 3 to this. So we can have more discussions on this, but I want to very clear but I want to call out that these are the things which will not be coming into Prism as a part of your migrations. All those red. So that's this slide has more of the no items with a specific reason why it is not there. And I will pause here before I go into the training sessions, because this was some of the important things which we discussed. Is there any questions?
I'm not seeing any questions here, Ashish.
Okay, excellent. Uh, Now, so considering more from a logical point of view, we scheduled the migration, we identified the week, we did a migration, we came to know what are the different things which got migrated. Now, after the migration is completed, as I was mentioning, you will be getting an email about the migration is completed. Also, our customer success representative will also be reaching out to schedule a few calls with you so that you can get acquainted with how to stuff about how to use Prism, the new system. But apart from those specific things about those CSR calls and the training, the major and a great way to understand the Prism as a whole are these CohereX workshops, which we are doing across the US. And this is the list what Rocio is highlighting. We have a website. You can go to our website and do a registration. But just to give you a snapshot, there are a lot of things coming from next week itself, and starting from February 13th till May 2nd is what we have as of now scheduled. So if you are in a vicinity of this particular area, you can do register it. These are all the Cohere access which will happen in one of our university partners campus. So if it is nearby, you can register it and you can have a great experience. So apart from getting a training, you will be having a good way of exchanging the way that you have set up your stuff, and it is more a networking event also for you to understand with your other counterparts from different universities. So this is one of the things which I want to highlight here. You can go into the website, register it, and these are the upcoming Cohere access. So those were more a hands-on one day workshop in person, which where our team comes in, we explain entire Prism, we go through all of that. The second part of the trainings is on the webinars. We are going to schedule a multi like most of the things you will be seeing is every week there would be a sessions which will help you into a more detailed discussion or a more detailed overview of each features of Prism. So you can register based on your availability, but these are the webinars starting next week onwards till April 5th. Different topics will be covered and you can log in and register for that. This is a great opportunity to understand the Prism if you are migrating during this time. So that's it, and we'll be continuing this webinar session. This is something which are there, and we are having this continuous webinar sessions and series coming up. Good.
And I'd just like to add and chime into this webinar series. Some of the common questions we receive is what's the difference between the webinar and the CohereX training? And the real answer to that is that the content is about 95% the same. But in a CohereX, you are receiving the whole 9 yards. You're getting all of these different sessions in one day. So the CohereX runs from about like 9 to 5. So you are receiving a ton of content, which is great for users who really want to get into Prism and get started and get kind of all of the available features and just know everything about Prism. So that's a great way to do that. You get that face-to-face interaction with our team. But with the webinar series, you get these bite-sized pieces of information with the system. So if you would like to focus on one topic at a time, then the webinars are a perfect fit. But if you'd like everything at once, then the CohereX is another avenue for you to go. But either one, whether you are attending our webinar series or whether you're going to a CohereX, you're not missing out in terms of content. We're trying to make sure that these are kind of giving you everything that you need to be successful with using Prism.
Thank you, Rocio. Okay. One of the other resources is we are actively working on making sure that the help center of what we have developed for Prism is as comprehensive as possible. So when you will be receiving your Prism invites, and if you want to know that okay how to add a site or how to add a location in Prism, you need to there are help center available. There are a step-by-step guide on how to do specific sort of an action, correct? How to do a placement, how to do add a new site or a location or a personnel. So all of those aspects, more from a administrative point of view, student part of view, is available in the help center. The link is available here in this particular slides, which you can explore. But this would be one of the other resources which would be in your particular arena of going into the cohere access, going into the webinar, and the help center is like you just click on it, know it, and move forward. Okay, so that was on the help center, and last but not the least, we have the support and the chat. So yes, as I was mentioning, once the Prism migration will complete, you will be contacted by our customer success specialist, and they will be scheduling around 2 or 3 sessions of covering the overall Prism and making sure that you are comfortable with it. So that is one of the things which happens as a part of the process. So that would be there. Apart from all the resources, we will also be opening up the chats for students, for faculty, and for the school administrative in the month of February, March, and April respectively. So by end of April, you should all the stakeholders should be able to have a chat with a support agent, get some of your question answer very quickly, and basically move forward with if you have a questions or how to do stuff. So that way it will help you from a resourcing point of view. And last but not least, the support. You have v4support at exact.com, where you can reach out with your issues, your questions, your request, and that is what something will be replied back and will be resolved by our support agents. So that was more from a training point of view, resources to help you bring up to the speed of the Prism. As I mentioned earlier, Prism is designed to be more intuitive, and it will help the learning curve will be much less. But we have all these resources in place to make sure that you have all the things available to move forward and have and start working on Prism from the next after the migration itself. So we want to make sure you have all things available on the ground. That is what I wanted to cover in today's webinar, to give you a quick overview of the migration process, how to schedule it, what it entails, how to decide the migration, what is the scope of migration, what happens during the migration week, and what are the resources available post migration, so that you are understanding and you know how to use the system much well. Yeah. So any questions for us to help you with from a migration point of view?
We do have another question here. So we had a question here from Allison. Will the slides of this presentation be emailed out to us to have as a resource? And I answered that, but I wanted just to share with the audience in case anyone else is also wondering the same thing. These slides will be shared with you folks. They were actually shared in the reminder of the webinar starting. So it's embedded in the email. It's kind of hard to find, but it's in that email, so you should have received it already. You can have it, you can download it from the handout section here in the webinar, or just wait for the email that is sent out. We do send a follow-up email with the recording, and we also include the presentation link there as well. So you have multiple avenues of getting that presentation should you need it. We do have another question here. Will there be more chat options beyond the dates listed for us to join? Our program will most likely not be migrating until this mid or late summer. And I'm sorry, Allison, do you mean when you say chat options, is that like the webinar or the Cohere X dates? Just want to make sure.
I guess if that is the if I understand from Alison, if you need any webinars or the Cohere access, this is at this moment. It's not that we are stopping in May. We will continue, but at this moment, what you see for all the webinars and the Cohere access, they are just scheduled till this time. You will be receiving in the from our Tuesday tips also the new Cohere access coming up, new webinar coming up. So it will be continuing the entire 2023. So if that is your question about the webinar or career access, it will continue. As of now, what I'm giving you visibility of next 2 months and 3 months where we have schedule at the moment, but we are going to have all this available in entire 2023.
Awesome. Thanks, Ashish. I do have another question here from Cindy. How long till we hear from someone after we send an email to Prism migration email?
Yeah, I think within a couple of days, we monitor this migration email, every 2 days. So you will be receiving within couple of days, you will receive a reply back. Our account managers will be reaching out to you for this for the scheduling the call.
Okay, awesome. There is another question. Will there be a separate webinar series for curriculum mapping? So as of now, we do have the one webinar that focuses on curriculum mapping, and that's going to be our part 10, curriculum management. So there is a webinar for that, but we don't have a series for that yet. It's just one of the parts in the webinar series as of now. Allison, let me know if we answered your question about the chat options. I just want to make sure we answered that correctly, or if there was a follow-up question to that.
Rocio, can you go one slide before the thank you?
Yeah, for sure. Let me go ahead and do that here. 1 second.
Oh, the chat feature, okay, let me explain you the chat feature, which means, sorry if this is misunderstood, the chat feature is inbuilt in the Prism application. What I meant, sorry, I think I understand what Alison is saying. uh, the chat features is going to be live. It will be available for the student module of Prism, for the faculty module of the Prism, for the school administrative module of the Prism from April onward. So it will be part of a product itself. So it's not a training, but you will have a chat bubble there where you can start having a chat with them from this day onwards. So it will be a product feature which is getting out in Prism. So sorry if that was not clear.
And I think I can actually pull up the system to just show you guys. Let me know if you can see that okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is our student account. It's student number 4, but this is just a sample account here. It's where we use our system for testing, but this is the chat feature that's coming very, very soon for our Prism users. But essentially, students would be able to open up that chat, talk with our support team, and as long as someone is available, they can go ahead and connect, type in their message. Should they need to have additional assistance, a ticket is generated within our ticketing system so that we can go ahead and help them. So this feature is coming first for students, and then it will be rolled out for other users as well.
Yeah. So Alison, it would be a feature which will be available from that day onwards. So from April onwards, anyone from a Prism point of view at any administrative, if you log in, you will have a feature to chat with a support agent and resolve your issues. So it's not like a webinar or something like that. It is a product thing which we are trying to help as a part of the product itself. So it will be available from this day onwards. I hope that helps you with your question.
Yes,
Okay.
she followed up saying thank you for the clarification. Awesome. Okay, one of the other things that I wanted to do on this call, since we did finish a bit early, and not that I want to keep you guys here, but I wanted to get a sense of the audience and how you guys feel about moving to Prism. Are you guys excited? Are you nervous? Are you wanting to stay on version 3? What's the general consensus amongst people on the call? So I'm going to go ahead and open up a poll here. and you guys can let us know, and maybe we can have just an open discussion to see if anyone wants to express or voice their concerns, and maybe we can kind of build off of that. So I went ahead and opened up that poll, so feel free to go ahead and answer that. And once we get at least like an 80%, we'll go ahead and look at those results. All right, we have about 60% of our attendees who have already responded. We'll give it a couple more seconds here. And while you guys do that, I'm going to go ahead and check the questions here. It looks like we have some people who are very excited to move over. Wonderful. Sophie gave us a comment saying she's super excited for the migration, but nervous that it'll be a headache for administrators and students. It can be, change is always, sometimes it can be difficult or uncomfortable. But depending on your setup, it might be a breeze too. I've heard one of the biggest kind of feedback I remember from Cohere X's is programs saying, we had our students start off on Prism. They did not learn version 3 and that's all they've known. And they like the experience, they like using the system. But then we have programs who have students who learned version 3, then moved over to Prism, and the learning curve was just a little bit different and a little more difficult. Definitely can be a different experience for students, depending on whether they've seen the previous version of the system. All right, so it looks like we have a good chunk of people who have already voted. So I'm going to go ahead and close the poll, and I'm going to go ahead and share the results so we can all see what that looks like. So it looks like we have a few people, 53, about half of our audience is excited. A few are nervous, and 5% would like to stay on version 3. If you guys would like to kind of give us your feedback as to why maybe you'd like to see on version 3, maybe it has a feature you really like, and let us know. Feel free to raise your hand if you'd like to share your thoughts with us on the call here.
Excellent, Rocio. Thanks.
Yeah, so feel free to just raise your hand to let us know you'd like to kind of chat with us for a second here. And while we see if we have any brave volunteers, it looks like we have another question here. Can you verify that Prism will have a user-friendly time card system for our students and our field instructors to be able to access to review and approve?
Yes.
Good question, Allison. Ashish, do you have any
Yeah.
comments on the time
When
card?
when we say time card, just wanted to make sure that terminology, it's like logging all the time, time logging, I guess.
Timesheets, probably,
Timesheet.
I'd bet.
Yes, yes, it is much more simple in Prism, and it hardly takes for five sort of a click, like add a start time, end time, have your categories if you want to do, and then submit it. And on the fieldwork side, they will get a link. They don't need to have fieldwork, don't need to have the fieldwork instructor, don't need to, or an educator don't need to have any of the login, uh, but they can directly access and approve it. If it's a fieldwork instructor from an administrative side of the school, they can review it very easily. So Rocio, if I guess you are trying to show that if you have one of the students, so
Yeah, I'm
if we
trying to
can
see.
quickly show the timesheet.
Okay, yeah, I'm trying to pull that up while also hoping we'll have a brave volunteer who you guys don't have to. I know public speaking is not my forte either. um, but I know that some of our clients just love to hear what other clients are feeling, what they're using the system for, their experiences. I mean, I think it really helps to kind of not feel like the questions you have are sometimes questions that other people are having as well. So that definitely helps. So let me log in here to one of our student accounts, and I'm going to go ahead and go into clinical coursework. So this is what your students would see. Your students would see their courses or their placements here on the left-hand side. And I'm going to go into one of our completed placements just because it lets me go through that to-do list that you guys know of where they're completing their activities. And here we have timesheet. So the student easily sees how many, of their timesheets have been approved, what's in progress, what needs attention. Student goes in, adds a time entry, they add in their start date. I don't know if it'll let me do it because technically this placement already passed, but they would select their date, their start time, end time, break time if they want to log that, clinician information, categories if you would like to collect that information, but you don't have to. And then any student knows and they'll go ahead and save or submit, whichever they prefer. But super easy. They can go ahead and add those in here. Of course, they can mark these as overnight if needed as well.
And just to add on the thanks, Rocio. That's and just to add on this timesheet feature is inbuilt available. You don't need to send an email to exact support that, hey, can you enable a timesheet? You yourself would be able to enable a timesheet and be it is available out of the box. So no need for any interaction with support. You can do yourself, and it is at a course level, course offering level. So whenever you do it, it would be applicable for all the students who are there for that specific course. So very easy, very much in your control to enable the timesheet. We have got the feedback about timesheets, and the students are students in a lot of migrated and the new clients have been using the timesheets from a long time now. So this would not be an issue. I guess the question was from Alison. Yes, Alison, that would not be an issue.
All right. So I'm not seeing any other additional questions here listed, so we can go ahead and wrap up today's webinar. Ashish, did you have anything else you'd like to cover before we head on out?
No, thank you everyone for your time, and we will once we receive any of your whoever wants to migrate, we will be if you reach out, we'll start contacting you. So looking forward for that. Thank you very much for your time today.
Awesome. Thank you, folks. If you have a few minutes, you know the drill. We'd love to hear from you. Stick around once this webinar ends for a short survey to let us know how we're doing, what can be improved, and any additional topics you'd like to see in the future. Have a great rest of your day, everyone.
Thank you.